back with another episode of the Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell from the Kansas City Soccer Journal. As normal, I have with me Erik Bergerud. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. Once again, not at the world famous Kansas City Soccer Dome, but it's glad to be with you on Zoom here, Thad.
I did go to the world famous Kansas City Soccer Dome today, but it was relatively empty.
Wow.
Apparently, they
Okay.
had scheduled practice but moved it, and I was not informed, so I went and there was people getting treatment there. So
Didn't get the memo. Oh, well. But hey, it's always great to go there. It's like you've come to the home of Kansas City indoor soccer.
very true. All right, so I think it feels like we get in a, I don't want to say a rut, but we get in a repetitious pattern. Kansas City Comets are doing really well. They're doing great. They're doing really good. But wait, there's going to be a tough streak. We hit the tough streak. Kansas City lost. Kansas City lost. Kansas City lost. Do you feel like we're in a rut here, Erik?
I feel like fans need to come out Friday and do some sort of mojo, because for me, a lot of this right now is mental and not so much that they're getting outplayed by other teams. And so I don't know what it's going to take this weekend, Thad, but maybe some creative listeners, fans will come up with something that will break this 7-game streak, because it feels like even when things look like they're turning, they go south. And I would much rather be sitting here having a conversation with you about a lot of goals scored, everything clicking, and as opposed to finding faults with things going wrong.
Right now I would actually be satisfied with, hey, they gutted out a close victory.
That would work too. Hey, they got a point in St. Louis. How's that?
Well, okay, I will say it's a little bit shameful, quite honestly.
Well,
Only a point in
yeah,
St. Louis.
I think what's really unfortunate about that is it's well, there's a couple things. You never want to lose to your rival, particularly when, if you look roster to roster, the competitive balances in Kansas City. But leading at halftime 4-1, see if that sounds vaguely familiar, because that's basically what happened with UCFC on the game that started this streak. Is going to halftime feeling comfortable, and then things start heading in the wrong direction, and there's no escape.
Maybe that will bookend the problems and everything will be hunky dory after this. But
Maybe we'll see. I mean, I think that this weekend's going to be a really good test. First of all, you hear everybody in the Comets organization say there's no place like Cable Dom Arena. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. That the fan support really creates a competitive atmosphere that benefits the Comets. But they're also having to balance that with Zach Reggett not being there on the 1-year anniversary of his trade to Kansas City. He will be in Argentina with the U.S. men's futsal team. We could have a conversation about that. And so they're going to have to prove that they can win without him. In many ways, he's been not, I don't want to say carrying the team, but shouldering the burden on goal production for this team. You see how other teams match up with him and try to get him off the ball, try to get him back to the goal. And so we're going to see what Rion Marquez and Leo Gibson and others have in a store for Tacoma and Empire this weekend.
there's often a worry about teams having a superstar, a goal scorer, a person to go to, actually making a team worse because everybody's trying to find that person. And I know that does happen a little bit with Zach, but I really don't see that as being one of the bigger issues with Kansas City. I mean, do you?
No, I think the issue is where you would expect the rest of the goals to come from aren't coming from. And so what's interesting is you have Tacoma coming in with Nick Pereira shouldering a lot of the burden. Sure, he got MVP last year, but he had to carry the goal scoring for that team. He scores a lot of goals. He gets a lot of assists, and then players play well off of him. I think for Kansas City, it's not that Zach isn't scoring to the same degree he was at the beginning of the season. It's that where the goals are coming from aren't coming from everybody across the board that were at the beginning of the season. You're seeing one-offs on all the lines, and I would say that the defensive line, different people are stepping up later in the season than were at the beginning of the season. The midfield line the same way, and then up front, we started with Leo Gibson not scoring to now he is scoring, and Rion Marquez still trying to find his groove. Well, somebody's going to have to step up this weekend because there's not a 2-goal or a 3-goal performance there for Zach Reggett that you can count on in both games.
Yeah, I would agree. We talked just briefly before we started recording, but this team is too talented to be not performing better. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I think that I would encourage the more adventurous listeners to take a look at the last couple games and just, I mean, if you don't want to do that, go on to MASL social media and look at the goals that they post, and you'll see it's a collection of things, but a lot of it is mental. And I think that Coach Stokic has even said this, is we're losing our concentration, and it's across the board losing the concentration. I think what shows how spread across the response, I'm not saying blame, I'm saying responsibility is, I've heard relatively few "it's all Neto fault" comments this year, either in game or on social media. I think that even the people who spent all of last year, maybe part of the year before, focusing on one player are realizing, well, it's kind of hard to blame him when he's not even playing, or it's hard to blame him when he's bailing out the team and the production's just not there. And if you look at the last 3 games, 3 goals scored at Utica, 5 goals at Baltimore, 5 goals at St. Louis. You're not going to get 9 points in this league with that goal production. You're not.
No, would agree. I mean, you can pull out some wins here and there with 5 goals as long as your defense is, locked down kind of thing. But
But that's here and there. I'm saying
yes,
if you're
no,
looking at a 3-game stretch, that's not enough goals to get all 3 wins. And so they're gonna have to score more than 5 goals in both of these games because Tacoma can light it up. And the way that Marco Fabian has been playing for Empire, I would expect Empire to come in trying to outscore Kansas City. They're not going to sit back and try to play a 3-2, 4-3 game. It's just not going to happen.
no, it should be exciting as far as that side of it goes. Let's I don't think we can pinpoint like where there's a problem other than they're not outscoring the opponent. I mean, it's kind of on both ends. The defense hasn't necessarily been as good as it should be. The offense hasn't been coming from everywhere that it should be. The goalies have been not bad, but every once in a while they kind of go on a little bad spell as well. Not picking on either one of them. I mean, but it's I kind of associate. I was talking with somebody earlier, and I was trying to explain how I was breaking down one particular goal. I'm not going to do that here because it take too long. But it just seemed like one person's trying too hard, which causes somebody else to be out of position a slight bit, and all of a sudden it looks like it's a total mess when really it was one person just trying a little too hard, which caused a chain reaction. Can you see something similar to that, or?
Yeah, no, I'd say that's right. I'd say that it's a combination of things. The other, I guess, realization that has come to me over this goes back to that first game, the Utica game, is the Comets have a mix on the roster, but they have a lot of players that are over 30. It's really, really hard to play transition soccer for 60 minutes, particularly when you're on the older side of the league rather than the younger side of the league. And I know that there are young players on Kansas City, but that's something I'm going to be watching this weekend is what does the transition game look like? How are players putting themselves in the right position, like you said, Thad? But also how is the team adapting on the field and how resilient are they when things aren't going perfectly? I'm going to be watching all this weekend, and I feel like you talk about us being a broken record about bad news. I feel like we've been a broken record about this is a must-win game because I think Coach Stokic started it with the game at Utica, like this is the most important game of the year. Then it was, oh, you have Baltimore and St. Louis there, and those are teams that you want to close the door on. You lose at Baltimore, then it's like St. Louis is a must-win game. Then you lose at St. Louis, and now you have 3 in a row at home, and all against non-conference opponents, right? And so these don't count double. These basically what you're trying to do is just hold serve at home. It has to be 9 points, Thad.
And it's not going to be easy with the run of form that they have been in. Missing Zach, you got to get confidence. You got the back-to-back game, so you may not have the best performance out of 30-year-olds back-to-back every night. It's not going to be easy for them.
Well, but teams have to travel this weekend, so
True.
I think that Empire has to travel. They're going to have some decisions to make in terms of lineup on Saturday too. So it's part of the league, part of what to expect. Coach Stokic has made some changes. If you looked at the team that played against Baltimore, there were several lineup changes heading into that St. Louis game, and so he has been managing minutes, rotating the squad, which I think is good. But with Raggett out, all of a sudden you're expecting your legendary all-time scorer, and we need to talk about Leo Gibson's accomplishment that he made, but you're expecting somebody at 40 years old to play a regular shift, and you're expecting somebody who came off the injury wire a few weeks back, who missed St. Louis game because of a red card, to play a regular shift too. And so for me, you can call it mental, gut check, whatever it is. The proof is here this weekend.
It will be really interesting to see how coach approaches it. Does he change up tactics a little bit? Does he keep trying to hammer through what they should be able to do? It will be very interesting. I did not get a chance to talk to him today, so we will have to see what shows up.
I've talked to several people around the league the last week, and I think other than the people who are being glib about the Comets' woes, I think it's been shock that this team that is so talented, that started so strongly, is having this problem. I don't think anybody saw this one. I mean, we knew that a 6-game road trip, it would be highly unlikely that they came out with a winning record, but having that loss at home first to Utica and then 6 on top of that, I don't think anybody saw this coming.
No, absolutely not. And I think we've kind of thrown the blame generically almost everywhere, because it has been pretty much everywhere. But we talked again a little bit before we started recording. The one place that we don't really lay any blame is the young guys, the
Well,
Acosta, the Linus, the
let me
Philip.
offer a caveat. I'd say in terms of on-field performance, they've been great. I think what I want to see, particularly from those two, Acosta and Linus, are 100% attendance the rest of the year. And what I mean is they both have had to miss because of nagging or injuries. The Comets need both of them there every single game from this point forward, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. Is you're now at the point of the schedule where you may have to play with a knock, or it may be a challenge on these back-to-backs if you're not feeling 100%. But there are no other at this point. There are no other responses, no other options out there. I know that you're going to be talking with managing partner GM Brian Budzinski, but I haven't talked to him about this. This weekend coming up is the 1-year anniversary of one of the biggest trades in Kansas City indoor soccer history. That was the trade with Harrisburg that sent Richard Schmerman, Mike Da Silva, and Lucia Tetsane out to the Northeast for Zach Reggett. Unfortunately, Zach won't be in Kansas City for that anniversary, but they knew they needed to make a move last year, and I have not seen any signs of any moves this year. But you're starting to see other teams make moves. Last week it was Milwaukee bringing back Max Ferdinand. Baltimore just announced another move today on social media. And so will Kansas City stand pat? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything, and I mean, with this roster, they should be able to manage. All right, let's go to something positive for a second. We've already mentioned it. Leo Gibson scored in St. Louis to become the all-time Kansas City indoor scorer.
Yeah, so let me a little bit of context on that, and then I'll share with you the top five. So this is all appearances. So that includes regular season and playoffs. And so heading into that game, he was tied all time with Kevin Ketters, who scored a ton of goals during his time with the Attack. So Gibson is now number one overall. Kevin Ketters is number two. No big surprise. Wes Wade, number three. Scoring Goran Hunyak, number four. And what's interesting is you have a couple different eras tied at number five. You have Brian Haynes, great Kansas City Attack player. And then the legendary Jan Goosens for the Kansas City Comets, the original Comets, tied for fifth. And so you look at that scoring power in that top five or top five plus, and Leo Gibson has topped all of them. That speaks a lot to not only his longevity, but where he should find himself in Kansas City soccer history.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on many pods about, comparing the eras when they played many more games than they do now. Leo playing many more years than a lot of those guys did, so it's hard to make those direct comparisons sometimes. But no matter how you look at it, he is a legend in the indoor game in Kansas City and really should be across the league. So.
No, absolutely. So we're gonna, with some help from your friend and colleague Mike Kuhn from the KC Soccer Journal, on this weekend's broadcast and slash webcast, we're going to have two different stats that we're going to share. On Friday, we're going to share all-time Kansas City appearance leaders. So that includes regular season and home. So that'll start you with a little bit of perspective, how many games some of these players have played. And both Leo Gibson and John Sosa find themselves all time in the top 10. And then on Saturday, we'll go into the all-time goal scoring leaders. So you'll see Kevin Ketters played nearly 80 more games than Leo Gibson. And Leo Gibson topped him in terms of total goals. Wes Wade played 160 plus more games than Leo Gibson. Goran Hunyak didn't even make the top 10. So give Goran Hunyak, some credit on production, but where Gibson finds himself on both lists is all-timer. He will not, well, I say that. I don't anticipate that he's going to play long enough to beat Gino Schiraldi at all-time number one in appearances. But keep in mind, when Gino played, for the most part, it was 48 game seasons. Leo's been playing 20 and 24 game seasons.
Yeah, big difference there. I think after this weekend, I will have to get Mike to give me like a breakdown of the goals per game played, assists per game played, also, because I think that'll be a very interesting look at that of how that turned out.
Yeah, no, I think so. And the game has evolved for sure. And for maybe Goosens would be the only one I would say that some of his early Kansas City goals, actually many of his early Kansas City goals, I feel like he should get an asterisk because those were in the smaller goals, sort of the original era goals that
Yeah.
near the end of the original MISL, they expanded the height and width of the goals. So the targets are a lot bigger than they used to be when Goosens got started. So I feel like he should get some extra credit for scoring on a smaller target. But that's probably a good segue to one of the challenges I see that for the current Comets is shots on target. It's either a lot of them have been going wide or a lot of them have been coming straight at the goalkeeper. And I know that's cliche, but ultimately you score when you get on target past the goalkeeper. And so it's hard to know from my vantage point how much of it is mental versus the role, the run of play in terms of, are people really pushing their shots, or is it just the Comets don't find themselves in the best scoring opportunities. And we'll see if that turns around this weekend.
Yeah, they're not making it difficult enough on the goalies to make those saves. I know there's a saying, and I probably will butcher it, but you don't want to give your enemy problems, you want to give them dilemmas. So a problem would be just stopping the shot. The dilemma is when they don't know where the shot's going to go and they have to figure that out. Maybe it's going to
Right.
the back post, things like that. So you have to give them a harder opportunity to figure out how to make that save, and they aren't doing that well enough, often enough.
Well, the other thing that happened last weekend, and on this show, giving shout outs to the Milwaukee Wave may sound like sacrilegious, but Giuliano Oliviero found himself down in late in the game against Harrisburg, surprisingly down, and he went six attacker the whole way, and they wound up winning the game. I don't see Kansas City doing that. It'll be interesting to see if other teams try to mimic that, but I think the attitude that we're comfortable with who we are moving the ball around, and we're willing to take a chance on giving up a goal because we know we have the quality on the field to possess the ball and find that open shot. That speaks volumes about Jules's confidence in his team. I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of confidence comes out this weekend for the Comets in terms of, do we believe in this team? Do we put ourselves in positions to win? Who's in the lineup both games, etc. I'm going to be watching all sorts of variables here, just to read a little bit in between the lines in terms of where this team is mentally.
Yeah, I would agree because I felt last year one of the issues was that Leo, as the coach, kept going to the veterans for everything, and I mean, they're great players, but again, just being able to play every game, every minute, or as many minutes as they did, is tiring and it's tough, and they would fade sometimes. And I want to see where Stefan does with that. Does he go a little younger? Does he go more veteran? How does he work this, especially with Zach out? Does he play more defensive? Does he still go with a higher energy transition game? It will be very interesting to see what his approach is.
Yeah, and what adjustments is he going to make heading into that game, and what adjustments is he going to make during that game? Because
Yep.
I know that when the Comets were up their last home game against Utica, I know because I talked to him afterwards, or I messaged him afterwards. I know Everton had let's just call it an interesting halftime chat with his team. They were down 4-1. Their fans were writing this off and saying, "Oh, the sky is falling." They were on a losing streak heading into that, and now it's all sunshine and lollipops in Central New York. And so they made adjustments in the transition game. They made adjustments defensively, and it worked. And I think that there's a team right now that is in a tailspin, and how to turn it around. You might have to get really creative in terms of game prep and game management in a way that you wouldn't have earlier in the year when they were winning every game.
Yeah, it's the tables have turned so much on so many teams now. Teams you thought were going to just be running it, and fans were so complimentary of how the team was playing way better under Stokic, and then now it's the exact opposite. So,
Yeah,
uh,
well, I mean, I posted something on social this week, just my personal perspective, my introduction to indoor soccer with a team that was 8-40 in its first year, and when they turned the corner, like the Comets, they started off big, 14-5, and then everything fell apart, and then they wound up finishing the season 10-19, and so it's a grind. This season it's a grind on the players. Fans get all excited when things are going really well, and feel frustrated and hopeless when things aren't going well. But the punchline in all this, that is something I know we've said on a couple podcasts. In the end, you need to qualify for the playoffs, right? Four teams in the East are going to qualify for the playoffs. So at this point, Forget about first place, forget about things you can't control, focus on what you can control, which is preventing Baltimore, and to a minor extent St. Louis, from catching up to you, because you will have a chance, even if you're the 4 seed, most likely to bring Monterey here, give them all you can here, and then you'll have a couple shots at them down there. And that's what it all matters. In the end, nobody is going to remember which team was top at the regular season. They're going to remember who lifted the Ron Newman Cup. And so the question for this Comets team is, do you still believe in yourselves, and do you still have your eyes on the prize? And don't worry about where you end up in the standings. I'm talking about 1 through 4. You absolutely don't want to be 5 through 7, but
No.
get in the playoffs.
9 games left, 6 of them at home. 2 of them on the road on the West Coast.
I'll be at one of them. I will hope to break my all-time streak of never having seen the Sockers lose at Pechanga Arena. So I went out there last year, didn't go well. I'm a believer still, right? That I will be able to say on my bucket list, the Kansas City Comets went into Pechanga when nobody expected them to win, and I was there to see it in person. So we'll see.
I hope you were correct. Comets at Sockers. That's Sunday, February 25th. What's the over-under on red cards?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. We'll see if people behave themselves. I would say,
I'm expecting not, Eric. I'm expecting not.
yeah, let's see where the Comets are. Maybe we'll revisit that in the pod going up that one. If things start improving, I wouldn't see the Comets being as desperate going into that game, and I would expect a regular one. If their back is against the wall, then I would expect a really physical game at Pechanga, because in a way, I mean, they would almost have to have that mindset going in there. So they go from Pechanga to Empire that week, and then one more trip to St. Louis, your hometown, Thad, St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I gotta see what else is going on. I'm sure there's something. I've not made it over there for a game last 2 years, I guess.
I'm going to try. No guarantees. It's an afternoon game. I think going across the state on St. Patrick's Day has its own risks and rewards, but we'll see. I'm still holding out. I can make that trip too.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day is one of the 2 amateur nights, as I call it. New Year's Eve and St. Patrick's Day, when the people who don't normally go out and get drunk go out and get drunk. So it's even worse than normal.
And you know what's coincidental about that? 2 of the games in St. Louis have been New Year's Eve and St. Patrick's Day this year. So go figure.
Yeah, amateur nights. That's one reason I didn't go to the last one too. All right. Quick notes. Like we said, Zach Reggett won't be there because he'll be with the futsal team training. And who called him up and who doesn't have games this week?
Well, so that's interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this. So UCFC head coach Everton is also the futsal coach. There are a couple teams that didn't schedule themselves for MASL games because of Super Bowl weekend. Utica's one of them, Milwaukee's the other. And so there's some disproportionate pain here for teams that are loaded up on games during the break. And if you think that it's unfair to Kansas City that Zach Reggett won't be there this weekend, be a fan of the Texas Outlaws. You have 2 games in San Diego. One had to be rescheduled because of the arena flooding that occurred earlier in the season. You're going to have 2 games in San Diego without Luis Morales, without David Ortiz, and without Sebastian Mendez. They are going to have a really difficult week ahead, and things haven't been going well for Texas, but they're going to kind of feel like things are against them right now, maybe even more so than Kansas City.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We're not the only ones that can complain about that, but we can still complain about it. The other thing I wanted to make sure to mention was 10 for 10. Is that's what it's called? You're hosting?
Yeah, no, appreciate that. So we being the Major Arena Soccer League, launched a new series last month in honor of the 10th anniversary. So New episodes post every Friday. We started with an interview with Keith Tozer for the first episode. I interviewed Shelley Clark, Ambush CEO, for the second one. I had a really interesting conversation with Ryan Sigich, head of officials, that will air this week. And then stay tuned. I might have stayed somewhere in the Eastern Conference for episode 4, which will be a week from Friday. And so I'm scheduled 2 interviews this week where I pre-record them, but these get posted on a weekly basis. And I still promise there's a Kansas City angle in here. I just am not in a place yet to release the identity of the Kansas City angle, but it's going to be, I think, a really entertaining interview.
That's interesting. I knew it was Ryan Sikic, but I don't know how I knew that because it's not on the MASL website yet. So interesting.
In the announcement, in the news release announcing the series, they teed up that Ryan Sigich was going to be in there, and
Okay.
so yeah, I didn't know it's been announced. I'm just trying to be a little bit coy, primarily because I don't want any of these to fall through, and then me say, yeah, I'm going to have an interview with blah blah blah, and then that person have to back out. But I will be able to give an update in next week's episode. I might be able to give you a couple names in next week's episode of who else is coming on.
All right, cool. Before we run out of time, I appreciate you coming on as always, Erik. Let's hope there's a couple of good results this weekend and nobody in the media game dies, and hopefully all goes well.
Yep. And what do they say? There's no place like home. Comets, I know, are looking forward to being in front of home fans this weekend. Looking forward to a fun time with the celebrity game on Friday, and then Saturday, red out. Wear your red at Cable Dom Arena. Great for the Comets, and then get people excited about that football game happening on Sunday.
All right. Appreciate it. And we are out. Welcome to another segment of the Blue Turf. I just got done talking with Erik Bergerud a little while ago, and right now I have with me Brian Budzinski, general manager, managing partner, pretty much done everything with the Comets since they've come back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Thad. Excited to chat with you. Kind of a little bit over the mid-season mark of the season.
Yeah, I ran into you up at as Erik makes sure I say, the world famous Kansas City Soccer Dome uh, earlier this morning, and you were willing to come on the pod with me and talk about the state of the union of the Kansas City Comets. It was
Yeah,
looking really good for a while.
yeah. Well, first, I love that Erik has coined the Soccer Dome the world famous Kansas City Soccer Dome. I need to start having my staff incorporate that a little bit into the marketing some more. But Erik is he's talented in multiple ways. And yeah, saw you earlier today, and there's definitely lots of questions around where the team's at right now, and so I thought you've asked me to come on previously during the season, and I thought right now might not be the worst time. So
Right. Like I was saying earlier, the team started off well. We knew there was going to be a really tough road trip in the middle here, in the middle third of the season, and it's went probably about as bad as it could have went. Just what's your thoughts on how the team is right now?
yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a question for your buddy Mike Kuhn, or the professor Brian Holland. Other than the previous incarnations of the Comets and potentially the attack, I think the road trip that we just endured is one of the longest ones in historically of the franchise. Now I know back in the day, there was the American Royal that would happen, and the Comets would play like a game or two at home, and then they'd be gone for a month or a month and a half. But I think that that this will mark in my tenure of just about a decade and a half, this will mark the longest I can remember that we've ever been on the road consecutively. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of sugarcoating to it. we walked out of this thing with 1 point on the road out of 6 games is definitely not expected, and also disappointing.
I know. Again, we were talking earlier. You gave me a prediction on how many games you thought you'd lose the entire year. Do you want to share that, or is that prying behind the curtain there?
No, I mean, I think we try to. I mean, I think all the teams in our league, you know, correspond with their fans in various different ways. We try to be pretty transparent about things. We
Yep.
try to make our players be, accessible as much as possible. I think that's also why a lot of players want to come and play here is, we showcase them, but they also got to, they got to, answer to some tough questions. Our coaching staffs, as you know, because you've interviewed all of them, historically, probably like Vlaco got a lot of practice with you that helped him be really good when he got the super, super tough questions when he was tough times are happening with the U.S. women's national team. So, we don't hide behind that. I I thought at the beginning of the season, just to be frank, is we put a very, very aggressive roster together. We went out and signed free agents. We went out and made trades for players. We went out and ensured, that some of our key players came back. Lots of players received raises. We went and made a coaching staff change. And with the talent that we put on the field, I mean, I think we expected, I know just kind of internally in my own head, I said to myself, I don't know how this team loses more than 5 games in a season. And that's just my personal opinion. I don't know that I shared that anywhere, but I also know by what's been said publicly, our team, in the locker room had goals that, they wanted to go, 4-1, right? Or 3-1 or whatever it was for each of the, or 5-1, I think is what it was for each of the 4 kind of breakups of the season. And so that you do that math there, it's, internally the goals were similar to kind of what, the ownership's goals were.
And I mean, we talked. I've talked with Eric on the pod. I've talked with fans. I've talked with other people in the Kansas City Soccer Journal, and you guys put a really good roster together. We thought, you brought, like you said, veterans in, Vandegrift and Berto back on defense, and you got Zach last year, like almost exactly a year ago. You've added young guys who have contributed: Acosta, Lennis, Philip. Where has it went wrong?
Yeah, I think that's actually the challenge of where we are, organizationally wise. There's not a thing that you can point to. There's sometimes, that there's, and I've shared this with you in the past, but there's, injuries happen, right? And that throws things off the rails. We've been relatively healthy for most of the season. To be fair, I actually think we're probably been healthier this year than we had the previous 2 years.
Yeah.
We lost Rion for a little while. Leo has kind of been a little in and out, kind of with some groin, issues and stuff. But Berto, we had a few weeks, but again, these are, Chad's missed a game, and these are minimal, right? None of these are major, kind of, season altering injuries. And so, when you ask me the question, what is it? I'll sit right here today and I'll tell you, I don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you. I know that our coaching staff is trying to figure out what it is, and they've, to their credit, they've tried lots of different things by changing, whether we're playing with a defensive runner or without a defensive runner, where certain players are playing in the midfield and certain guys are in the back. Who's in goal? Are we running in threes up top? Are we running in twos? So it's, you know, from a lack of, it's not from a lack of trying to identify the problems. I think, and I'll be fair, and say this about our team is, and I think our guys, if they would, they'd listen to this, I don't think that they would be upset by hearing this. I think for me personally, the biggest disappointment is, we've got a very veteran, talented squad with guys that have been in this league for 8, 9, 10 plus years. And not being able to manage when adversity's hitting. That's kind of what your veterans are supposed to do. And that for me, I mean, those guys are who they are for a reason. They're some of the greatest players in the history of the MASL.
Yep.
That part right there for me is probably the part that I'm a little personally disappointed on, is that our veterans haven't been able to help our coaching staff kind of right the ship.
And I thought early on, like that was part of the strength was, I saw some of the veterans helping out the younger players learn how to do things and, tack a certain way or, play the ball off the wall, just different things like that. They were doing a really good job of it, but it is kind of up to them to help coach pull it out of, get the right mindset. I mean, but it's not the young guys. I don't want to blame the young guys because I don't think it's their fault at all, but it is up to the veterans to kind of help pull everybody together, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, part of the responsibility of a veteran is, I mean, you hear it all the time. It doesn't matter what the sport is, and it doesn't matter what the league is. It's veteran leadership, right? Like that. That's that's how you deal with adversity. That's how you manage your body. That's how you manage your emotions. That's how you stay focused in games. That's how you learn to rest when you need to rest, because you went through all of it and you've got experience. And so therefore you take that experience and you know how to balance a season, and then you provide the leadership to everybody else. And you can't expect guys to have A games all 24 games of a regular season. That's unrealistic. But that's why, again, when you have a veteran roster, a certain couple veterans should be able to do well, while a couple others are maybe in a bad spot or a little bit of a funk, or maybe got a couple knocks that are kind of hurting a little bit. And so, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I think, and I think our guys know that too, right? Like I think when you go around, the roster, and you look at Alberto, you look at a Chad, you look at a Nacho, you look at a Ray Lee, you look at a John Sosa, those five guys. I mean, three of those guys are considered some of the greatest defenders in the history of the MASL.
Yep.
Right? When you look at Ramon Palmer, this another guy that's won a championship, right? You look at Leo Gibson, the Kansas City Comets all-time, Kansas City indoor soccer all-time leading scorer. You look at Zach, is a veteran as well, and so I think, that's a lot of really big names that I just mentioned, in not just recent history of our league, but the 10 years the league is celebrating, you know.
Sometimes it's not just having the veterans or the young guys, but it's having just that right mix. Is it maybe somehow the right mix is not there?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Thad, you could do the same thing that I could do, and that's grab a bunch of darts and throw them at the wall, and one of those is gonna stick, and
Yep.
maybe that's the reason. I'll be honest with you. The one thing that I do know is that I know it's not, from a lack of us being prepared. That's the one thing that I know is what our coaching staff has done, with the various partnerships, the staff additions that we've had, the down to the day, down to the minute, details of everything. Coach Stefan asked for a bunch of new things in the budget that had not been there previously, because he wanted these guys to be taken care of at even of a higher professional level. And so the one thing I know is, being prepared is not the problem. I think our players are prepared. Whether they are, retaining the message, from the coaching staff, I think that's obviously, that's something you could look at. Whether us adding these new pieces has kind of made things a little wonky, if you will, and I don't know that I have a better word for it, that where it's, they don't know kind of who to work with to get out of it. There's a bunch of different, types of scenarios, but I'm hoping that by the fact that the staff has stayed consistent with being prepared and being organized and having the guys fit, watching a ton of film, that, this is just one of those major funks that a team goes through. And I've seen it, I watched it with Sporting with my own eyes, just like you did, and a lot of
Yep.
listeners did, this last year. They look like the worst team in the league at the beginning of the season.
They were the worst
And
team
at
in the league at the beginning of the season.
they were. And at the end of the season, I'd make the argument they were, if not the best team, and obviously they didn't win, so the best team always wins, but I'd make the argument that they were one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league at the end of the season.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that, potentially our team is the same, right? Our rut just happens to be in the middle.
And I know, I mean, because you brought Sporting into it, that was first 10 games of the year last year. They went winless, and after that, they were the best record or close to the best record for the remaining games. It's always interesting to see what made that turnaround, and there's a lot of interest in that. Is just coming home and getting some home cooking, because that was a long road trip. It was a tough, and you were playing in some of the tough places, Monterey. They're darn good. So that probably played into it and maybe started that streak.
Yeah, so you brought up a couple things right there. That so first, again, just me being a fan watching Sporting, but knowing how professional that staff is, right, and prepared. I think Alan Polito coming back helped, right,
Yep.
right. So talent injection obviously made a difference. Maybe some guys kind of getting to play in some roles that they were more accustomed to. Stress kind of takes off a little bit because you get kind of another guy that can kind of handle things up there. But also, probably there was probably something that happened where I guarantee you, Peter and Z would say something happened in some game that that just flipped the luck the other way. And then it just takes this gigantic gorilla that's sitting on your back. It takes it off. And then the fact that you've been consistent the whole time with how you're preparing, right, then takes off. I am a firm believer that momentum is very much a thing in sports. And I
I would
think that
agree.
anybody that says momentum is not a thing has never played a sport. And once momentum gets going downhill, it is tough to turn it around. And it is tough. The hill becomes actually steeper, if you will. And when momentum's going with you, it's like you can do no wrong. You can be a Zach Reggett and hit the ball off of the right side of your left knee when you're looking and pointing the wrong way, and the ball sits perfectly in the goal. When momentum's going downhill, Lucas Sosa can have a wide open goal, just like he did this past Sunday, and hits the chip just like he should. And Marcel Berry comes flying out of nowhere and does a scissor kicks and kicks the ball off the line. Those things happen when momentum is going up and when momentum is going down. Now, the other thing you said that is, playing tough opponents. You're not going to get me on that one, man. That ain't my thing. And I will not throw other franchises under the bus, but there are franchises in our league that want to play easier teams. I don't want to play easier teams. I want to play the best teams. I want big games all the time. I want my players to play in big games all the time in tough environments. We're leading the league in attendance right now. So every game at our place is a big game for everybody that comes here. Because some of these teams are putting in 1,000 fans, and we're putting in 5,000 fans. So they come here, and it's the Super Bowl to play us, right? Every time. And I think our players struggle with understanding how much everybody gets up to play our team, right? And how much they get up to play here. And so I don't think it has anything to do with the type of opponents. I think that we have the talent, that we can play anybody, anywhere, and we should be fine. We had a different type of roster, I would go with that. But I don't, we got, I've used this term before. We got a bunch of dudes, and these dudes should be able to be just fine wherever we go.
Fair enough. And I always, there's some things I hate to ask, but I gotta feel like I gotta do the realistic journalist job here. Is Stefan on a hot seat because of this losing streak at the moment?
Now, not at all. Like, I think Stefan and myself and our organization. I mean, we made because of the level of coach that Stefan is, we made a choice to go into this season and not flip the entire roster over and put a bunch of young kids and say this is going to be some slow build. Stefan is up there with the top coaches in this league. I would say that our coaching staff is top 2 or 3 in the league right now. I think in probably 2 years, our coaching staff will be the best coaching staff in the league. Um, you know, what Stefan's challenge, I think, is he cares so much. He's got to make sure that the guys that are playing for him care as much as he does. And I think that's where he's kind of at, because I don't know, I don't know that there is anybody that cares more about winning than Stefan does, and I care a whole hell of a lot about winning, right? And that man has a lot of passion, and he's the right person to be leading our organization now and in the future. And but he's going through some tough stuff, right? I mean, all these guys, I'm not trying to make a comparison to sporting, because I don't know what it was Peter's first year, right? I just know when Peter's going through a bunch of stuff in year 14 or whatever he's in, it's different.
Oh, very
Stefan's
different.
going through this. Yeah, Stefan's going through this stuff for the very first time, right? And it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
But he's a big boy, and he's up to the challenge, and he's more than capable, and the squad's more than prepared. And I'm excited just to see his face once this thing kind of starts turning its head around, and it will. I mean, there's too much talent for it to not.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not calling for him to be let go or anything like that. I knew that there probably are some fans out there wondering this, so I wanted to ask that. I know I've seen Stokic play. I've seen the emotion in his face when he stepped out there as the coach for the first game. So I know how much he cares about this, and I've seen him coach youth, so I know I've watched him do things. I know he's a really good coach, and it is still a learning process, though. He is still a rookie coach for the professional side, so it is a learning process.
Yeah, it is. And listen, it's a tough, I mean, he's also got tough shadows to go into, right? I mean, you looked at, his one of his coaching mentors obviously being Vlaco. It's like, Vlaco came in year 1 and won a championship, right? Vlaco also on the back end, coached an undefeated team and then got upset at home, right?
Yep.
In the first round of the playoffs. It's, you're going to get punched in the mouth. This game, being a professional, you're going to get punched in the mouth, at some point in time, and you're probably going to get punched in the mouth a bunch. So you just got to figure out how you handle it. And it's a little tougher in the beginning because you don't have experience to rely on. But I think he's doing a good job, and I think he's open to suggestions. He's open. He's reaching out to people. He's doing veteran, player, leadership meetings. He's doing individual meetings. And he's not scaling back on anything. And as far as work ethic that's required by everybody, and it's a winning mentality, that right that Stefan has, and we've got to get that winning mentality, to carry over, on the field with the guys.
And keep it going. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time, but what do you expect from the remaining schedule? There's 9 games left in the regular season for you guys. 6 of them are at home, I believe. What do you have? What expectations do you have in these remaining 9 games?
Yeah, listen, I mean, the road, my friend, does not get any easier. Okay, we're gonna play a very good Tacoma Stars squad on Friday night, and those are battles. Nick Pereira is, one of the 4 or 5 best players in our league, and one of the 2 or 3 best scorers in the league. And they've given us fits. They love coming to Kansas City. They love the barbecue. They settle right in like they've been here every 5 times a year. I believe their only losses are to the Sockers, and then just real recently to the Flash. So Nick's got a good squad there. And then you got to turn right back around and play, in my opinion, even though the results are not there, in my opinion, the hottest team in the league, which is the Empire Strikers. Marco Fabian, and I'm a diehard U.S. men's national team guy. Marco Fabian, what he has came into our league and done since the first kick in comparison to Jermaine Jones and Landon Donovan is different.
Yeah.
Okay, is much different. Um, and that guy just keeps figuring out indoor soccer a little bit more and a little bit more each week. And he's going to have probably 1,000 fans at the game, cheering for him that are from Kansas City. And so the road's not doesn't get any easier for us. We turn right back around and go out to California, and play the Sockers and then play Empire again. So we'll play Empire in the course of 10 days twice. It's tough to play anybody twice in 10 days. So what my expectation is, I mean, where we sit at and being realistic, we should be able to get ourselves from being the 4th position up to 2nd or 3rd, right? 2nd might be a little tough to get to right now, but because Utica doesn't play games while their head coach and their 2-star players are out of the country with the national team, where our team does. And so I think what you're going to see is guys put their heads down and get to work, and I think we're going to probably get ourselves in this position where we right the ship a little bit, get the momentum going back uphill or going back downhill, and get ourselves in a spot to, once we get to the dance, man, talent's talent, and I like our talent against anybody in the league.
Cool. And it's a question I wanted to ask you at some point, but since you brought that up, since Zach Raggett will be gone this weekend to be up with the futsal team, national futsal team, can you reschedule next year to make sure he's not missing those games?
Thad, I will give you a politically correct answer is that it sucks for Zach, right? Zach's not happy about himself. I think he's even quoted in a Star article about it. It's a poor position to put a player into.
Yeah.
I will also say that the Kansas City Comets have had historically the most members from the MASL represent the U.S. national futsal team historically, and we have never had players miss games. If Zach had went to the previous camp, Zach would have missed 5 out of 24 of our games.
Yeah.
Where the players for the head coach, Everton Moreo, for Utica, his 2 players would have missed 0 games in that same stretch. And, I struggle to see that as a coincidence.
No, I
So
don't
I
think
will leave that at that from a politically correct response.
I don't think it's a coincidence either, and I don't have to be as politically correct. But I was gonna say we make sure you try to find out the schedule next year and see if you can manage that around it. I'm gonna leave you with a positive, a happy thought. You did mention you're a U.S. soccer fan. We just found out the schedule for the World Cup in 2026. Kansas City has 6 games. Probably not a U.S. soccer game, but how many of those do you think you're going to be at?
Oh, I will be at all 6. No ifs, ands, buts, or as a matter of fact, as I am being interviewed by you right now, I am actually staring at a frame on my wall that is the 2006 FIFA World Cup. It is a jersey. It is the program. It is a young Brian Budzinski and his wife, and our tickets to USA Italy, USA Czech are there. And those tickets actually came from the Burmese family. They took care of us. So I am a Sam's Army guy, not just an American Outlaw. I'm an old one, Thad. I'm a day one. I'm a Sam's Army guy. Few things I geek out more for than U.S. soccer. The fact that the World Cup is in our city is unbelievable. There's no other word besides unbelievable. We are the smallest market by a mile, and we've got 6 games, which is, unbelievable as well. Not 3, like some of these other places, not 4. It is going to be a fantastic time in our city. And I'm taking my family, and my phone, when it was announced that we were one of the sites, I immediately got the text, right? It's like, hey, you got me, hey, you got me, hey, you got me. And I'm like, there's only so many I got yous, but and then the line, the line has to stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a wonderful time, man, to be in Kansas City, Thad.
6 games, a knockout and a quarterfinal being 2 of those 6. And how many does St. Louis have? Wait, never mind. I won't go there.
Well, you know what, Thad, they've got the same amount of as the MLS championships that as World Cup games they've got. And, they're trying to play catch up to the better side. And I know that's where you originated from, but it's
Hey,
being a guy that grew up, playing the club soccer, and KC was on the bottom of the end, if you will, to St. Louis, and you had to listen to the birthplace, and God created soccer, straight off the hill in St. Louis.
yep.
Not in Brooklyn, but whatever. It's fantastic, man, that those guys will have to come over here and spend their money in our city at our hotels and eat our fantastic restaurants and make our community a better place.
Yeah, I'm quite happy about that. And yes, I am a St. Louis native, and I still root for the Blues. I still root for the Cardinals and all Kansas City soccer teams. So,
Right. And you've got your priorities straight.
um, hey, if there was a team that was existed when I was over there, maybe I would still root for them, but there isn't. So screw that. And I have a lot of pride in St. Louis, but I have a lot of pride in Kansas City, my hometown now. So that's the way it is.
Yeah, I got a ton of friends over there. It's a good city. I love that that the game of soccer was created for all of the world to cherish right off of, in the St. Louis County right there. I love that that's what a lot of people genuinely actually believe in their hearts and minds.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Uh, anyway, don't want to keep trashing any cities, but because there's a lot of people out there that deserve to be trashed more so than even St. Louis. Anyway, I appreciate the time, Bud. And is there any last words you want to leave, man, before we run out of time?
No, just listen, keep fans, keep your heads up, man. Keep supporting the boys. They see everything you guys say on social media, the good and the bad, and that's okay, right? They're professionals. And but keep supporting them, because that support is what drives them, right? It's what drives our organization. That's why we have the best fan base in our league, period. And there'll be more positive news coming soon. So boys will do well, and they'll make everybody feel better about where we're going.
One other thing I was asked to ask was any like mid-season trades to change fortunes, or you pat for right now?
No, I mean, if any trade needs to happen, it's probably somebody needs to trade me out of the general manager role. I guess it's like put somebody. There's lots of keyboard GMs. Thad. But that's how it works.
Yep.
No, I mean, listen, we're all our ears, and we're always scouting, we're always recruiting, we're always listening to things, and so, I mean, I wouldn't say that anything's preeminent that's being discussed or whatever, but I would say, we haven't really ever went, without making any sort of change in season, right? I mean, that's just kind of who we are, right, in general. And so I would be surprised if something's not done, but that doesn't mean we're working on anything.
Okay, I think that was a very good political way to say we're really not answering the question, and I appreciate it. All right. Thanks.
Got to try a little bit better on a couple things to be politically correct. That.
No, you did well. I appreciate the time, and we are out.